Imagine being lost in a forest you've never seen before. This is exactly the situation Mark found himself in. A world of towering trees draped in a lush canopy of green leaves, the symphony of birds taking flight, and a cool air that seemed to seep under his skin. It was as if he had been transported to a different, untouched world, a place where no human foot had yet trod. Mark studied his surroundings, trying to decipher where he was, but all that greeted his gaze was a sea of trees and sprawling rivers. There was no sign of civilization, no indication of another living soul. He was alone, swallowed by the dense wilderness, the only sounds being the whispers of the wind and the rustling of leaves. "Where on earth am I?" Mark murmured to himself, but there was no answer, only the melancholy silence that echoed back at him, amplifying his isolation. In his desperation, Mark began to look for a way out of the forest. But no matter where he went, the forest seemed endless. There were no signs of an exit, no indications of a refuge where he could find shelter. It was as if the forest was a maze, and he was trapped within its winding paths. Mark stared at himself in defeat. He was lost, in a world unknown to anyone else. He didn't know what to do, and he had the sinking feeling that he might never see his little sister again. With bitter tears, he traversed the forest, coming across peculiar creatures that watched him from every corner. But Mark pushed on, seeking an exit that could vanish at any moment. At one point, when he was almost succumbing to exhaustion and fear, he heard a loud noise in the distance. He quickly moved towards the sound and found himself in an open area under a clear blue sky. "Where am I?" asked a man standing in front of him. Mark looked at him in disbelief. It was the man he had been searching for. Mark was alone, caught between the overwhelming silence of the forest and the fear of never finding his way out. Mark was determined to find an exit from this endless maze of trees and rivers. His heart pounded with the rhythm of his steady strides, each step echoing through the vast, untamed wilderness. The towering trees seemed to close in around him, their emerald leaves rustling in the cool wind, whispering secrets of the forest he was yet to uncover. Struggling against the disorienting labyrinth of nature, Mark tried to find signs of an exit. Each direction he took seemed to open up to an expanse of more trees, more rivers, the relentless cycle of greenery and flowing water. The forest stretched out, seemingly without end, its depths only adding to the growing despair within him. His solitude was palpable, the silence of the forest only broken by the occasional call of a distant bird, a haunting reminder of his isolation. The rivers, once a symbol of life and vitality, now seemed to mock him with their endless flow, their course unknown, much like his own. In the heart of the wilderness, Mark found himself at a loss. The forest, once a beacon of adventure and mystery, had turned into a confounding maze. Desperate, he searched for any signs of a path, a clue, anything to guide him out of this verdant prison. Every tree, every leaf looked the same. Every river seemed to flow in the same direction. Nowhere. His hope waned with each passing moment, the despair in his heart growing as dense as the forest that surrounded him. The world around him seemed alien, untouched by human presence. He was a stranger in a land that time had forgotten, a lone explorer in an uncharted wilderness. The reality of his situation sunk in. Mark was lost, in a world unknown to anyone else, unsure of what to do next. His heart ached with the thought of his little sister, her face a fading memory against the backdrop of the endless forest. He longed for a familiar face, a comforting voice, anything to break the deafening silence. Mark was lost, in a world unknown to anyone else, unsure of what to do next. His journey had just begun. The forest still held its secrets close, its exit hidden in its dense green heart. Despite his despair, Mark continued his journey, encountering strange creatures along the way. The wilderness was a world teeming with life, filled with beings unseen and unheard. Mark found himself face to face with peculiar inhabitants of the forest. From the tiny insects scurrying away at his approach, to the enigmatic owls, their eyes gleaming in the curtain of darkness, each encounter was a testament to the untamed beauty of nature. Amidst the towering trees and the echo of his own footsteps, Mark met creatures of diverse shapes and sizes. Some were covered in vibrant feathers, others wore a cloak of fur, and a few bore scales that shimmered under the dappled sunlight. The rustling leaves whispered tales of these forest dwellers, each with their unique rhythms of life. Mark's journey was a dance with the unknown. Each encounter, whether it was the brief glimpse of a deer darting through the undergrowth or the quiet observation of a squirrel storing food for the winter, was a reminder of the resilience and adaptability of life in the wilderness. Yet, despite the awe and wonder these encounters stirred within him, Mark was ever aware of his mission. He was a stranger in this world, a passerby in the grand theater of the wilderness. His heart pounded in his chest with a single persistent rhythm: the need to find an exit, the yearning to return to his own world. His determination never wavered. Each step he took, each breath he drew, was a testament to his resolve. He pushed through the fatigue, the fear, the overwhelming sense of being lost, holding on to the hope that with each passing moment he was getting closer to finding his way out. In one pivotal moment, just as he was about to give up from exhaustion and fear, Mark heard a loud sound in the distance. It was a sound that bore the promise of change, a beacon in the wilderness. With renewed hope, Mark picked up his pace, ready to face whatever the wilderness had in store for him next. Quickly, Mark moved towards the sound, leading him to an open area with a clear blue sky. As his eyes adjusted to the sudden openness, a silhouette emerged from the distance. His heart pounded in his chest. A human, another living soul in this vast wilderness. The figure drew closer and Mark recognized him. It was the man who had been looking for him. Relief washed over Mark like a wave crashing against a rocky shore. The wilderness, which had seemed so terrifying, now felt less daunting. The man's presence was like a beacon of hope, cutting through the dense fog of fear and uncertainty. They exchanged no words, for none were needed. The man's knowing nod said it all. Mark was no longer alone. The journey had been harrowing, yes, but it had led him here, to this moment, to this man. Mark's journey through the forest taught him that even in the face of despair, one must never lose hope. There's always a way out, even from the most daunting of places.